We skipped Europe during summer and flew here instead. But how do you navigate the most challenging continent to visit? The one with the most diverse landscapes and people. 54 countries make up Africa, and yet most people stick to visiting 15 of these countries at most. So we embarked on a journey. 9 countries, 3 months, 15,000 kilometers, and no flying or car rentals allowed. Most people rent cars to do safaris in this region, or they might hire a local company to do a safari for a week or two. We'd be doing it the local way, by bus, from southern to East Africa. Stick around for the whole journey and a budget breakdown at the end.
Let's go! Oh my god. And we're bringing food, yes we are.
My journey first started solo, in Namibia. People warned me against going there on my own. Dangerous, expensive. Not only was it extremely safe, but it was also my cheapest month of full-time travel. I found a group of 4 strangers on couch surfing. I joined them for a 10-day road trip around the country. We did wild camping, had animals approach us instead of spending hours looking for them, like the wild horses of Namibia. We also got stuck in the forbidden region. We had permits though, but we still could have died. I have a whole playlist dedicated to Namibia if you want to check it out. Itinerary, how to do it on a budget, how we managed to get out of the forbidden region. After the road trip, I hung out on my own for a few more weeks. I stayed in hostels, met other travelers, and went on day trips. Had such an amazing time in Namibia. If you're into nature, road trips, and no crowds, I highly recommend you visit. From Namibia, I took a bus from Binga to Cape Town, 22 hours, and prices vary depending on the season. I paid a bit over $50. You can buy these on the Intercape website. The bus was extremely comfortable, one of the best night buses I've ever taken. I have a detailed blog post on the route, prices, and how to book each ticket of these trips. Cape Town quickly became one of my favorite cities in the world. Food, culture, diversity, nature, hikes, beaches, affordability if you have a strong currency, the wildlife, being able to find penguins at the beach, or go to vineyards that are in the outskirts of the city. We even took our first ever helicopter ride here, the cheapest one I've ever been on. But it's not perfect. Which places? Safety, racism. Funnily enough, this is the country with the highest rates of crime in the region and the most visited one. It was the only country that felt dodgy throughout this trip. After 2 weeks in Cape Town, we took another overnight bus to Bloemfontein. Oh, I had Ben, another content creator, join me for the rest of the trip. There really wasn't much to do here. It was the gateway into Lesotho. We took a bus to Maseru. Lesotho is a tiny landlocked country within South Africa that many people skip and shouldn't. We hired a local guide, Kiketso, which I'd highly recommend. It was through him that we got to see the authentic side of the country. This is the country that inspired Wakanda. And the Basotho people wear traditional blankets instead of jackets. They use horses in the villages instead of vehicles. Being in Lesotho is like stepping back in time. Crisp air, and yes, it snows here. We went to the ski resort with the highest altitude in the whole of the African continent. Lesotho is such a vibe, and you can check out my full blog here. After Lesotho, we took a local bus to Johannesburg, stayed there a few days, recharged, and then made our way to eSwatini. If you haven't heard of this country, it's because it changed its name recently. You might be more familiar with Swaziland. Nope, not Switzerland. The king of Swaziland changed the country's name to eSwatini a few years ago. He got tired of people confusing the two countries, and yes, there are 3 kingdoms left in Africa. This is one of them. You're not allowed to speak ill of the king here, just like in Thailand. And unfortunately, if you Google eSwatini, the first thing that will come up is how high their HIV rates are. What we did focus on, it's people, nature, and culture, not negative headlines. Although there aren't many hostels in this region, we found one of the coolest ones I've ever stayed at, right inside a wildlife reserve. We got a private room for $15 each and could go on walking safaris around the area. There are no predators here, like lions, so that means that you can walk around without a guide. Imagine just going out for a walk and coming across zebras, wildebeest, and warthogs. The best part is that we are the ones living in an enclosure. We're fenced, they're not. That's the way it should be. We also had the opportunity to connect with a local through couchsurfing. He was working for the king, so that allowed us to learn much more about the country than we would have otherwise on our own. He picked us up and took us around for 2 whole days. eSwatini is tiny and can be easily covered in 3-4 days. If you're looking for wildlife and to get away from the Kruger crowds, come to eSwatini. After eSwatini, we made our way to Botswana via Johannesburg. stayed a few nights in Gaborone, the capital, then went up to Maun in Kasane. This is where the rough buses begin. Smaller seats, less comfort. But from here on, all the way to Tanzania, we were the only foreigners in every single one of our bus rides. We were doing this the local way, and it paid off. We had to stop in Maun to see the famous Okavango Delta. We took a canoe or komoro, the local mode of transportation across the delta. It was like a safari on water, and this was followed by a walking safari. As long as you're with a guide, you can walk where the wildlife roam. Our guides explained to us how the previous generations used to protect themselves with plants and even elephant dung from insects and diseases. This was part of a day trip, but you can easily camp overnight in the delta if you book it in advance. After Maun, we went to Kasane, and it was breathtaking. Many people skip Kasane after Maun, and we're glad we didn't. The amount of wildlife here was incredible, better than anywhere else on our trip. If you stay at the Elephant Trail guest house, you'll find the cheapest safaris we saw in Botswana. This included a half-day game drive together with the sunset cruise in the Chobe River, the border of Namibia. Absolutely stunning and worth a visit, especially if you're in Big Falls. We were off to Victoria Falls. From Botswana, you can cross over to Zambia or Zimbabwe. Most people do Zimbabwe first. Let me show you why Zambia is better to do first. You need to pay for an entry stamp every time you cross over into Zimbabwe. Victoria Falls is on both sides of the border, but Zambia is cheaper. We first stayed in Livingstone on the Zambian side, and then crossed over to Victoria Falls on the Zimbabwe side. On the Livingstone side, you can take a micro light over Victoria Falls. Even if you're scared of heights, you have to do it. And it's even smoother than a helicopter ride too. On the Zimbabwe side, you can walk around the falls or take a sunrise cruise, which is what we did, or a sunset cruise. There were no people on site for the morning one. Although this was the most touristy spot of our whole trip, it is easy to see why Victoria Falls is one of the world's natural wonders. We wanted to spend some days in Zimbabwe, but didn't know where. We needed a car to go to the major sites, so we did the craziest thing ever. Asked ChatGPT where to go, and it recommended Binga, a town by Lake Kariba we'd never heard of before. This is the largest artificial lake in the world, and it was made by a dam the British made a few decades ago. We asked locals, and after a while, and a whole day traveling, we arrived. We couldn't book accommodation because there weren't any choices online. So we started going from place to place until we found one, and then a local woman offered to take us around. And then we met a Pakistani researcher who offered to take us back with him to Big Falls a few days later, and the car broke down. And that's okay. I might not have too much footage of Binga, but I'll definitely be back. It took 2 days to get from Binga to Big Falls because of the car that broke down. From there, we crossed back into Zambia and went straight to Lusaka. For my birthday, all I wanted was to stay at a nice safari lodge. And Lilai, in the outskirts of Lusaka, was the most affordable one we found. It was around 130 per day with complimentary morning game drives every morning. Because it had no predators, you were free to walk around the property too. The food was on point, and seeing wildlife right from your bedroom's porch was the perfect birthday present for myself. We were running behind schedule. We had less than 2 weeks to cross a few thousand kilometers to make it to our flights, so we had to rush through Malawi, and only had a few days to recharge at Lake Malawi before we continued with our journey. We did not give the country any justice, but I suggest you go down south or hang out in Hata Bay. Tip: don't take the buses that go along the coast. We did that, and those take an eternity. That was a big mistake. From Manhattan Bay, we had to rush across the country, cross the border before it shut down at 6 p.m., and make it on time for a train across Tanzania. The roads were rough, traffic was crazy, and we somehow made it within half an hour to spare. We went to Mbeya in Tanzania for a reason, to take the Tanzania Train. We found a Japanese traveler to share a boda with, and then we had to wait a day and a half for the train to depart. While it wasn't the easiest journey, and the train ride took 28 hours, and it was an amazing way to travel across Tanzania. I made a full blog documenting the journey, and you can check it out here. I definitely recommend this extreme journey. After the train, we took the ferry from Dar es Salaam to Zanzibar, our last stop. We were absolutely exhausted. The ferry's extremely choppy, and it's really common for people to get seasick here. Plan accordingly. I drugged myself with anti-motion sickness pills to avoid the avoidable.
Welcome to paradise. It's the second time here in Zanzibar. I was here last summer, and I absolutely love isn't the season. It's just so touristy right now. I'm like, is this place gone? And someone was like, oh, it feels like Costa Rica or like Bali now. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, that's too much, you know?
But do I still love Zanzibar? Yes. I just believe that I need to stick to new towns or villages next time I come. This island is fascinating, full of history, culture, stunning sights. It's not what it was like the first time around, but Zanzibar will always have a special place in my heart. And so we went to Stone Town because we both had separate flights to catch. We took a food tour last night. I forgot to mention how good food in Zanzibar is. It's a blend of African, Arab, and Indian food. It's unbelievable.
It's good. Masala spices? I've never had anything like this before.
And we even stopped at Mr. Mango, who served the very one foodie we all know about, Anthony Bourdain. And so our journey came to an end. 3 months, 9 countries, 15,000 kilometers, and all of it without planning or information available online. We relied on the kindness of locals and strangers to navigate from one point to the next, and it paid off. Had it not been for the conflict in Sudan, we would have crossed the whole of the continent all the way to Egypt. We also spent a fraction of what people normally spend in the region. 1 or 2 weeks here will set you back a few $1,000s. This is how we did it. I spent $1,293 on food, which is around $14 per day. Namibia involved a lot of cooking and food from the supermarket. The rest of the time I ate out throughout the trip. I'm a foodie, so that was usually wherever I wanted. For transportation, I spent $807, for the car rental sharing, around 20 buses, a train, and a ferry ride. I spent $1,445 on accommodation, which is around $16 per day. This was a combination of wild camping, hostels, hotels, Airbnbs, and lodges. On activities, I spent $1,594, which includes activities like the Mokoro, flying over Victoria Falls, cultural activities, and multiple safaris. I spent a total of $5,139 or $57 per day. This is not Latin America or Southeast Asia, but it was still a very reasonable amount considering how much we did. I've prepared full blog posts detailing how to get to each one of these destinations with prices included. You can also check out my other blogs on YouTube. I was very tired most of the time and did not do as many blogs as I would have liked to, but I do hope this video serves as inspiration to show you that this region is safe and it doesn't have to be as expensive as we're led to believe. You can check out my Instagram stories for more day-to-day info of our itinerary.
So this is it. You know that feeling? You don't want to leave a place, like, I don't know, your heart just throbs and you get like a really bad stomach ache. That's exactly how I feel right now. It's been 3 months, it's the end of the trip. 3 months, 9 countries. It's been absolutely incredible. I've had an amazing time. However, I have to say that, given the choice, the last 2 weeks have been absolutely exhausting. If I had to do this again, I would do at least 4 months instead of 3 with this exact same itinerary. And of course, every single place you can stay at longer, but that's personally what I recommend. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this gave you some wanderlust. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Just let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you very soon.